Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today, guys, we could be getting set up in these coming months to receive one of the biggest announcements and roadmaps for the Division universe ever since its unveiling back in May of 2021. Why do I say that, you ask? Well, let me back up a few steps. If you've been watching this channel for any good length of time, you may remember that occasionally we will cover news from these Ubisoft investors calls that they do quarterly for the entire fiscal year. Sometimes they will give updates and announcements on Division, games and products, since it is one of the major brands and IPs for Ubisoft, and in these calls, that is what they do. They give updates to their investors about their major brands. And so today, they had their first half 2022 to 23 earnings and sales report, as you can see right there, October 27th, 2022. And after carefully reading through and analyzing this entire report, I have found some pretty interesting hints and some subtle suggestions that we could be getting an incredibly major announcement and roadmap for the Division coming in the near future. Before we fully get into that more major part, though, there are some small suggestions here at potential release windows for Heartland and Resurgence that I want to touch on, and so let's look at that. So in their outlook here, they talk about the third quarter of 2022 to 23, but then in the full year, which again goes from this past April to the end of March of 2023, so within the next 5 months or so, it says the company confirms its target of significant net booking growth. The second semester will be built on the following pillars, and this is the one I want to focus on here first. It says the release of Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Just Dance 2023, Skull and Bones, and the first free-to-play initiatives, as well as the expansion for Far Cry 6, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't say Heartland by name, and I'm not claiming that this confirms that Heartland is going to fully release within that window, but we do know that internally at Ubisoft, the current outlook for Heartland is that it will release by the end of fiscal 2022, which again ends in March of 2023, and I think this probably confirms that because the first free-to-play initiatives, we know that Ubisoft had a wave of free-to-play stuff that they were trying to do, including Heartland, X-Defiant, Ghost Recon Frontline, which got canceled. They've had a lot of free-to-play games that they've been planning, and Heartland has been one of the most long announced and one of the most stable ones throughout its development, from what we can tell. And so, again, it doesn't say it by name, it doesn't confirm it, but I think this is a pretty solid look at the idea that Heartland will release by the end of fiscal 2022, so at some point within the next 5 months. If you saw my video earlier this week, you know that the game has started to receive official ratings in some of the biggest countries for gaming around the world, and I think that along with this are just more hints and more suggestions that we will have this game in our hands at some point within the next 5 months, which is pretty exciting. Also, the next bullet point down here, the significant impact from the mobile licensing deal, for which the clear majority of the upfront recognition will be booked in the second half of 2022 to 23. So that's slightly a weird way to word it, but from what I take from that, the significant impact from their mobile licensing deal, I think the majority of their mobile games are being done through this deal with Tencent, I believe it is. That includes the likes of Resurgence, Rainbow Six Mobile, I think the Assassin's Creed mobile game they have coming up, and so it says from their mobile licensing deal, which has been in place for a while, because we know that Resurgence started being developed in 2018, did they say? I think so. So it's been a while. They say the clear majority of the upfront recognition will be booked in the second half of this fiscal year. Now, again, not entirely sure what that business term means, but I think that means that they will probably release within that window, or the clear majority of their upfront recognition. Either way, I don't think it is a stretch at all to believe that the Division Resurgence could be releasing also before the end of fiscal 2022. We know that they have a closed beta coming up this fall, they said, so that should be in the very near future, and a beta is the last stage of testing, internally as far as those code names go before you release a title. So I think it's totally possible that within the next 5 months, we could be getting both the Division Heartland and the Division Resurgence, which, as a content creator, gives me a potential migraine coming up for all the stuff I have to cover, but it is really exciting. And so if that is the case, and if that is what this is suggesting, that's really awesome. Last thing to touch on before we circle back to that more major announcement that I wanted to talk about is we have a potential delay to the Division 2 Season 11. I'm not saying this is confirmed, but you can see on this page they talk about the title release schedule for the third quarter of this fiscal year, which goes from October to December of 2022. Now, if you remember back in July when we got that roadmap for the Division 2's, remaining Year 4 content, they showed that Season 11 and TU17 was set to release in December of this year. But you can see on this chart, it's not present. They have their packed in digital releases of Mario and Rabbids and Just Dance. Those are their, I think, the paid ones, the more major ones. But then digital only, they list off seasons here for all of their, live service games. For Honor Year 6 Season 4 is going to get its release. Riders Republic Season 5, Roller Champions, The Crew, blah, 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 Rainbow Six Siege Season 4. The Division is not listed here. And again, this is for releases from October through December 2022. So I'm Not saying this is confirmed that Season 11 is delayed. I'm certainly hoping that's not the case, but until we get further clarification, it would seem that that would, indeed be the case. Hopefully it would only be until like January if that was indeed getting delayed, but until we get further information, that's all I can say on the matter, and I certainly hope that we get Season 11 sooner rather than later. But all right, enough of all that. Let's get to the part that I actually really want to talk about, and that is they start off, this is like the second page, with one of these statements from the top people at Ubisoft. And this paragraph right here is the one I want to focus on. This is from Yves Guillemot. Hope I'm saying that right. That is, of course, the CEO, co-founder, it says Chief Executive Officer of Ubisoft. He's the guy in charge. And let me just read off what this says, and then we'll go over it in very fine detail. This semester, we continue to adapt and transform our organization in order to focus on resources on our biggest opportunities as exemplified by the recently announced Global Creative Office and by our cost optimization efforts. On our journey to reach 2 billion combined net booking per year for our 3 biggest brands within the next 5 years, we revealed our most ambitious roadmap ever for the Assassin's Creed brand, which received an incredibly enthusiastic response from our fans. Our objective is to bring the brand to new heights by reaching a significantly wider audience with more platforms and business models. We are replicating this strategic template with our other major brands, starting with Rainbow Six and The Division in the near future. We are replicating this strategic template with our other major brands, starting with Rainbow Six and The Division in the near future. Huh? You're doing what now? Now, before we talk about what that could mean, if you're unaware what they're talking about with this Assassin's Creed roadmap that they gave out, they talk about right here what it was. It was primarily back at Ubisoft Forward in September when they gave this, like they said, roadmap for the next several years of Assassin's Creed content. They announced the next game, which is coming next year, Mirage. They then announced the next 2 major titles that are releasing, I assume, the subsequent years, or maybe even a little bit later, but Codename Red is going to be in Japan. Codename Hex, I think they gave less details on. They also talked about the new kind of like launcher and hub that all of these games are going to be a part of, Infinity. They talked about a multiplayer experience that is going to be on Infinity called Invictus. They have Codename Jade, which is the mobile game that they announced. I mean, they're not kidding, their most ambitious roadmap for this franchise ever, and probably for any franchise ever, talking about 6 different projects here and initiatives within the Assassin's Creed brand for the next several years. And now he says right here that they're planning to replicate this strategic template with their other major brands, starting with Rainbow Six and The Division in the near future. That's huge. Now, to be clear, I don't think this confirms that we're going to get like a replicated, roadmap or necessarily the exact same types of projects for The Division as Assassin's Creed did. I don't think that's what that means. But what it does absolutely mean is that they are going to put forth the same type of effort and resources. They say right here, on our journey to reach 2 billion combined net booking per year for our 3 biggest brands, which, by the way, that I think means that they consider Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, and Division their 3 biggest brands. That's something that we've been wanting Ubisoft to acknowledge for such a long time, is that just how major of an influence the Division could really have if they would give it the same type of resources that they do Assassin's Creed, and this seems to suggest that that's where they're heading. So, of course, we already know that we have Heartland coming, Resurgence coming, but those are probably, like I just mentioned a minute ago, within the next 5 months. We then have more novels coming, the feature film, more Division 2 content. This seems to suggest that there's probably going to be even more that they said they're going to start announcing in the near future. Does that mean they could announce Division 3, years in advance before they plan to release it? Maybe, because what they're doing with Assassin's Creed now is releasing or announcing stuff long before they ever would have before in, old strategies. But they say this new strategic template of announcing stuff years in advance, laying a roadmap for where they want the brand to go. And that's something that we kind of have with the Division right now with, knowing these individual projects. But to get that kind of confirmation of who's working on what's planned for the long future, we don't have that yet. But they say that they're replicating that in the near future. And like I said, that's just incredibly exciting. So until we get more concrete information about what or when that might be, I don't have too much else to say on this. But again, the fact that they are saying that The Division is maybe one of their 3 biggest brands and they want to increase its audience to bring it to more platforms, have more business models, along with the likes of Rainbow Six and Assassin's Creed, which have historically always gotten more support than The Division, I seriously hope and think that this is a commitment they're making to increasing their dedication to The Division And again, that just really makes me stoked. So they say in the near future, who knows, maybe within the next 5 months before the end of fiscal 2022, before the likes of Resurgence or Heartland release, they could hold some sort of Division event similar to what they did for Assassin's Creed during Ubisoft Forward, where they talk about the release of those games, give an update on the film, maybe talk about the Division 3 or other projects that they're maybe planning down the line. I could totally see that happening. Maybe then they'll talk about Season 11 as well, since it's weirdly absent from the release calendar for quarter 3. There's a lot of stuff coming up in the future, and I think this investors report really highlighted that, and I hope you guys are excited, because I certainly am. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on to be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on this pretty bombshell investors call for the first half of fiscal 2022 for Ubisoft. What do you think about this statement right here? I mean, this is what we're all going to want to talk about, that they're replicating Assassin's Creed's strategic template recently with their other major brands, including The Division, in the near future. What do you take that to mean? Do you think we're going to get a big announcement announcing new projects, giving updates on the ones we already know about, or do you think it could mean something, different entirely? I want to know all of your thoughts, and yeah, it's going to be really fun to talk about and speculate on for the coming months. That is going to wrap it up for me today, though. Everybody, once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold. Ow.